I was just putting a little bit of food out, obviously, to bring them over. This is one of our older females. She's obviously having a bit of a go at someone. At this little fella that's just running past. Right, so, welcome to Monkey Forest again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to talk you through the history of this place. This is one of our monkeys called Ice. His number's I6. He's called Timmy. He's a bit... It's not... I'm allowed to say their names. I am. Becky's telling me off. I'm allowed to say their names. So anyway, so I'm going to talk you through the history of Monkey Forest. I'm then going to go through some specific stuff that relates a bit more to your questions that you're answering in your essay. I can see a few of you got notebooks out, and I remember from when I was marking these essays, sometimes we get people going, writing a sentence about the monkeys, citation, the guy doing the talk. Now, what's better, and what Alice and Finn and everyone are looking for, is for you to go off and do some reading about this stuff as well. So it's better for you to be citing things from the actual reading than necessarily what I say to you right now. So the history of this place. So we've been open for about 12 years. But Monkey Forest as an organisation's been around for a lot longer than that. So the first park opened up in 1969. That was in a place called Kintzheim. It's right in the eastern side of France, near the Swiss border. So they went and they got 150 Barbary macaques from the wild up in Morocco, and they brought them over to France, and they introduced them to a very, very similar kind of area to this. Then a little bit later in 1974, they opened another park in a place called Rocamadour, which is southwest France in the Dordogne area. Then in 1976, they opened another park in a place called Affenberg, Salem, which is in Germany. And then quite a long time later, in 2005, we opened up this place. So the idea of this, the original idea, was to help out the conservation of the monkeys. So they are an endangered species. There's less than 8,000 in the wild. The population's decreased by something like 50% in the last 30 years. There's a lot of different dangers out there in Morocco and Algeria, where they're from. And so they opened up the original parks to bring them over, look after them, breed them, and then reintroduce them. So in the 1980s, there were a number of reintroductions. They were reintroducing whole groups back into Morocco, and they managed to reintroduce about 600 individuals during those reintroductions, and they adapted really well to the wild, and they did really, really well. That was the last time we did any reintroductions. The biggest problem at the moment is that their biggest cause of their decline is habitat destruction, and so there's nowhere really for us to reintroduce. So what we do is we try and keep what is essentially a very wild situation for these guys. They, apart from a little bit of food we give them, they don't have anywhere they sleep at. They don't have any indoor enclosures or anything like that. When it gets cold in the winter, they'll grow a long coat, and they'll be able to cope with the winters. So they live basically as they would in the wild. So in theory, if an area opened up where we could reintroduce them, we could box all 70 that we have in this group up and take them over to Morocco and reintroduce them, and it should happen pretty successfully. So we are maintaining that sort of wild element to their behaviours. And as you walk around, you'll see a lot of behaviours which are natural wild behaviours. So we work very, very hard to make sure we see that. Hands up, have anyone been to Gibraltar and seen the Barbary macaques there? A couple of years. And what were they like in Gibraltar? If you go to Gibraltar, you'll realise that the monkeys there are pretty different to ours, in that they're constantly looking at members of the public, they're waiting for food off them, they're stealing things out of bags, they're stealing things from wherever they can get them. But our monkeys clearly don't do that, and that's the reason why I told you, just as you were coming in, please don't feed the monkeys, because we don't want them associating members of the public with food. So this is why they're pretty much ignoring you as you walk around. So it's a very, very important thing that we try to do here. So in the park, I think I mentioned we've got two different groups. This group down here, we call the German group. They came from the German park, and the group right at the top of the hill, this incline you can see just up here, as soon as you get to the top of that hill, you're in the French group's territory. Well, it's not really a territory, you're in their home range anyway. So the two groups don't mix, they live pretty separate lives, and they just crack on as they would in the wild. It's quite nice to see. So, what were the questions you guys were doing? I've got them written down. So, benefit greatly from free roaming in 60 acres, for real. So, as I mentioned, 60 acres, that's about the size of 40 football pitches. Our fence, which you can't actually see from here, but you will see it as you walk around, so it's about 1.5 miles of fencing that goes all the way around. So we have what is essentially a huge enclosure. You guys, this is about a 3/4 of a mile circuit that you can do. And you guys only see about a third of the park. So all up over this ridge here, all in that direction, the monkeys are completely free to choose whether they go over there. They tend to come and spend a bit of time down here because they get food given to them down here, basically. But at this time of year, we don't have to give them huge amounts of food. So you might notice as you walk around, the monkeys might be up in the trees. They'll be eating the acorns. I'm trying to see if we've got any. They'll be eating the acorns at this time of year. They'll be eating beech nuts. You might see them eating grass, leaves, little bugs that they'll look under rocks. They'll find bugs. You might see that today. So they have a really quite natural diet, which is supplemented by us. One of the things you saw me throwing out was a primate pellet. I don't know if any of you guys are keepers. Sometimes you are. You know primate pellets. They really like primate pellets. Mixed in there's a little bit of wheat, grain, and sunflower seed. Their natural diet has a lot of seed in it, so we try and mimic that a little bit by making sure they get seed in their diet. And it means that they're foraging a lot as well. I'm going to point out these things. So over here is this cage. So this has gone up at this time of year because we're moving in towards breeding season. So they have a very strict mating season, and it starts around October time. And because the conditions here are really good for the monkeys, if we let them just all breed together all the time, the population will skyrocket. So what we try and do is we have to kind of maintain the number we are. We had 140 when we started. We still have about 140, and that's because most of our females at this point have a contraceptive implant in them. So at this time of year, we're looking at trying to catch some of the females, remove implants, maybe put new ones in if they've just had a baby this year. So we have this cage up, so a female will go in there, the cage will drop, we'll be able to inject them with a tranquilizer, and then we can do what we need to do. And apart from that, that's pretty much the only time we really ever have to handle the monkeys. When they're about 6 months old, we've got this little one here. I've just pointed at him. So this is one of the ones that was born this year. He's only about 3 months old. Was it she? Boy, he's only about 3 months old. When he's about 6 months old in the winter, what we'll have to do is we'll have to catch him in the cage again, and we'll have to put a little tattoo on him on the inside of his thigh. So he'll get a little number. This year, I don't know if we're doing a U, but I think we might be on U or a W. So he's going to be year U or W, and then he'll have a number, and it'll be on the inside of the thigh. If you walk around, all the monkeys have this. If you see them with their leg out, you'll see a little number. And it's a way that we can 100% identify who we've got. Charlotte and Becky know most of the monkeys around, so they'll be able to tell you who these guys are, but we need to be able to 100% identify them. So when they're about 6 months old, they'll get that. And then females might be caught occasionally to remove or take implants, but other than that, it's the only time they ever get handled. So a young male may be only ever handled once in his life. He might go through to, 26, 27 years old, having only ever been handled when he got that tattoo when he was 6 months old. So we really try and minimise that contact with them if we can. Of course, if they need to go to a vet, they'll go to a vet, but it's pretty rare. Of the over 140 monkeys we have, very few of them are actually on any kind of medication. We had one of the older ones knocking about somewhere. There she is at the back. So, oh yeah, there we go. So some of the older females, this is one of our older females, might have a little bit of anti-inflammatory for arthritis, but really, we've got 5 or 6 that are on anything at any one time. It's really not many. And if any of you ever worked in primates in a zoo, that's pretty good. 5 or 6 out of 140 to be on any kind of medication. So they live a very healthy life. They get lots of exercise. They get a really varied diet, and they're happy. So this is this is quite interesting hierarchy thing we get within Barbary macaques. So if you're a female, you are basically born into your rank. So the dominant female's daughter will become the next dominant female, and nicely we have her right here. So this is the dominant female's daughter. So as soon as the dominant female dies, and she's about 27 now, which is pretty old for a Barbary macaque, she might in the next few years, unfortunately, pass away. So this female will then take over her rank. But males, it's completely different. So with the males, they have to kind of work their way up through the hierarchy, and the way they do that is by getting support from other monkeys. So if there's a little conflict between two adult males, all their allies and friends might come in and support them. And for instance, if I'm not allowed to say names, this boy here, who's not the highest ranking in the world, has Charlotte's favourite. If he has the support of a very high-ranking male, he'll come in, support him, and he'll win that argument, and therefore he moves up the hierarchy. So for the males, it's really important that they can make friends with other monkeys, social system, but it also forms really strong bonds as well. So in the wild, if this group was there with other rival groups all around, and they were having to defend their space from them, it's useful to have these really strong social bonds and know each other really well. And if predators are around, we don't have predators here, but if predators are around, then it's also useful to be really strong socially. So having that grooming is a really useful way of doing that. The other question I think you've got is ecotourism question. So in Morocco, it's an interesting thing that happens. So you can go to Morocco and you can to get a guide, and they'll take you up into the mountains and you'll see the monkeys. And so you can pay to do that. And there's sort of debated over whether that's a good thing for the monkeys or not, whether that money actually makes it to them. But there's also really things we would say is bad tourism that we can see. So one of the big trades, if you go to Marrakesh, anyone been to Marrakesh or any of the towns in Morocco? No? Yeah? You might see Barbary macaques there, pose for a photo. And we sort of say, please don't do that when you're there, but that's not great. Every year, about 300 babies are taken from mothers in Morocco, just to try and support that pet trade and that photo tourism trade, which when you've only got 8,000 is, I think it's something like half of the babies that are born are actually removed from mothers in Morocco. So so it's something that kind of tourism isn't great. The ecotourism, just going out, photo safari stuff, you can debate, it's interesting. So what I suggest you guys do today is have a walk around. Now, you're going to be able to see what you can't really see in any zoo in the country, which is full-size groups interacting together. So we have lots of young ones in this group. We have 3 brand new babies, well, brand new, 3 months old. We've got one at the top group. We've got lots of 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds. They all like playing together. We've got the proper hierarchies in all the males, all the females. So you can stand and you can watch all these wild behaviours basically as if they were in the wild, which isn't something you're going to be able to see in many other places. So I suggest you sort of spend your time having a look at that. If you want to be able to ID some of the differences in some of these animals, over here we've got a boy, just eating this piece of celery is another boy. You can see they're a lot bigger, but what you might see is they'll occasionally yawn. You'll be able to see their teeth. You can see they've got big, long canines. So the males have got the big canines. The females tend to have big swellings on their bums. This female here doesn't really have it at the moment. I think it's probably because she's had a baby this year, and it's more of a sign to the males they're ready to have another one. It'll be getting bigger, but some of the females have got very big swellings. So you can see a female here as well. So if you're just looking, I don't know who this is, you can tell who we've got. Again, in the wild, there'll be little arguments that will happen, so this happens here. But there's all sorts you guys are going to be able to see today, but I won't keep you much longer anyway. If you've got any questions at all, we've got Becky, we've got Charlotte, we've got any of the other guides who are in a yellow coat. You can ask them any questions you like. I'm sure they'll know the answer. I guarantee they'll know the answer. You can't catch them out. And I'll be around as well, so I can answer any questions. Has anyone any questions for me right now? The only we do every couple of years we might give them some worming, but other than that they're pretty free. We just actually sent off some fecal samples to the lab just to see what we're at, but we'll get the results back and then we'll decide what we're doing. But generally we don't have to do a huge amount now in terms of that.
Is there a decrease in like stereotypical behaviours which you see in other primates kept in smaller enclosures?
Do you see more? So you're just asking. I think you're saying, do you see more behaviours because they're not?
Also, like you get like all stereotypical behaviours in smaller enclosures.
Yeah.
Are they still present here? Or there's been a large enclosure?
I don't think we see any kind of abnormal behaviours. Not really. You don't. As you walk around, you see most of our monkeys have got all their fur, so they're not plucking that out. So you can decide as you walk around whether you think any of these are sort of stereotypical behaviours, but we won't see head bobbing or anything like that, no. Video. Other than that, enjoy yourself. And I'll walk around with you. You can ask me stuff.
I think so, yeah. I tried to do that. Fell over. I just give you updates. You need to know what you're doing.
You started it. I was trying to.
Teacher ladies. Oh, I'm sorry. Giving me anxiety watching it try and climb up the tree. We gave up.
He's eating whatever he's pulling off him.
Yeah, it's normally like bugs or something.
Oh, right.
Or it's got been bedded down. Just like a toe.
Bit dandruff.
Oh. Hey.
Oh.
One, two. I mean. He's home. What? She's turned to 2 and she keep that one home. Teach kids to put a baby one in someone's bag. That baby one was cute. Oh, that one over there. Go in the water. Tuck it. Oh, I had to jump like that. Where we were speaking. Where's she got a knife? That's where we know. Get a number and call her. I don't like calling people. You want to? Look at me, look, look, look. Can you see it? Oh, he's drinking water, mate. Look. Listen, Where? Time to get a watch. Oh wait, I'll have to watch the room. So that's it. I think we're home.
It is home.
It's not.
It is.
The shot. That's the shot. You guys can you listen to that? Look at him come from the tree. Hello.
Don't maintain eye contact with them. Else you will probably literally get your face.
You whistle at every animal you see.
It smells like it.
Look at his cute little face.
Okay.
I'm just gonna get something.